2 advanced strategies from the best players in the game on the biggest stage. I'm going to coach you up with them. I'm going to share with you 2 advanced strategies. One has to do with getting to the line. The other one has to do with dinking patterns. Both of them are pretty complex and we're going to go deep on them. That's why it's only 2 in this video. Before we do that, a quick couple of shout outs. Number 1, big shout out to these 2 players right here for coming up with a better solution to their partnership. And I got to give a particular shout out here to Federico Staksrud for agreeing to play on the right. I don't think there's any problem with playing on the right versus the left, but in the pro circuit, there is a belief that playing on the left is sort of like being the alpha player out there. You take more of the court, you have more responsibility, where the right side player is more of a supporting role. Think Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, if you like basketball. Listen, for Federico Staksrud to give up the left and move to the right, thumbs up there for being willing to do that personally, setting ego aside and becoming the stronger team. Second shout out, PPA. Putting together these types of events, putting these players together on the court. The only way we're going to learn advanced strategies, folks, is by having the best players in the game like this through PP events, just like this one. If you want to give yourself the best chance to win, you got to remember that you're playing a doubles game. So you're going to want to put your team in the formation that's the strongest. This is how Federico and Hayden used to play. So this is Federico here and Hayden's over here. This is a quarterfinal match, I believe, of the Virginia Beach tournament against good players, Jay Devalier and Matt Wright, good players in their own right, but players who historically Federico and Hayden would have been able to handle relatively simply and then keep moving on. They actually ended up losing this match, and part of the problem was this middle area here was uncertain for Federico and Hayden. Hayden wanted to play more aggressive over here and take more balls. That caused some issues for Federico. So what they did is they actually pivoted in the biggest stage, right? The World Championships with 3,000 points on the line. And they allowed Federico, not allowed, but they agreed to have Federico play on the right and Hayden on the left. That solved a ton of problems for them in terms of the middle coverage and also allowed Hayden to roam more freely. Federico super gracious in handling that. And here's how Federico explained it, which I can't do a better job.
I don't even remember.
I'll tell you what happened. Okay. This is what happened.
He knows.
He said, "You're trash at the left." I said, "You're trash at the right. Let me show you how it's done." And he said, "I'll show you how it's done." So it worked out.
And by taking ego out of the equation, Federico and Hayden had the best chance, the strongest team, ended up hoisting the cup in Dallas. The 2 strategies that we're covering in this lesson have to do with the 2 phases of a rally. Each rally has 2 phases to it. Phase 1 is the battle for the line. That is where the serve side is trying to make it up to the non-volley zone or the kitchen line, and the return side is trying to keep them away. So that's phase 1. And then phase 2 is the battle up at the non-volley zone or the kitchen game, basically, where you're trying to figure out a way to solve that puzzle up there, whether it's dinking or attacking, but you're trying to do something up at in the kitchen area. So what we're going to do is first we're going to look at a strategy that really impacts how the game will result based on what's going on during phase 1. So based on that battle for the line. And then we'll look at a second strategy, a second part of this game that'll teach us a lot about how to do better with our phase 2, which is when we're battling up at the non-volley zone area. Phase 1, the battle for the line, is as simple as it sounds. It's can the serve team make it up to the line and then fight from there or not. The more you make it up to the line, the more chances you have to score points. Simple as that. Is there a direct correlation? Is there a causal relationship between getting to the line and winning the game? I'm going to submit to you that there is, and I'm going to show you some statistics in a second. But here's the thing, guys. Numbers and gals, numbers don't lie. And I got to give credit here to my friend Jim Ramsey. He's the statistician with the PPA. You can find him at Pro Pickleball Stats on Facebook. I'll put a picture of him here and a little thing for the Facebook so you can find him. My conversations with Jim allow me to go deeper on understanding the data, on thinking through data in a way that we can use it to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And we're going to come back to this in a second here. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how these numbers in Game 3 and Game 4 of this match dictate the results. The actual scores are dictated by this battle for the line. Before we dive too deep in the numbers, let's look at some of the game footage from this match so we can see a difference of how each team is approaching the battle for the line. So right now we have CJ and JW serving. It's in game 4. Game 4 was a much closer match than game 3. Game 3 was 11-4. Game 4 was 11-8. So they're serving. So the question now is, can CJ and JW make it up to this line or score off the line or not make it to the line? So this first one here, we're going to see an attempt by CJ here to get up, get that second third going. You see it lands in the net. So this would go under, didn't make it to the line. Right? Don't make it to the line. Very difficult to score points in an advanced context. One of the things we're going to do too is we're going to talk about what to focus on depending on what level you're in as we go through this. But certainly at the pro game, you have to make it up to the line. So here they do a much better job now. So JW and CJ are up at the line. So that would qualify as made it to the line. Frankly, it doesn't matter what happens now. In other words, obviously they want to win, but just making it to the line alone is enough for this statistic to work. So there you see that nice little flick by CJ down here. But for that flick to work, CJ needs to be up at the line, right? They both need to be up at the line. Here we go with another, they scored a couple of points like that, but here we have another situation where, again, ball lands on their side of the net, and what happens is that is not making it to the line. So we have 2 and 2 right now on the first one here. Here we're going to see a different approach by Fede and Hayden. What I want you to notice is the height of these shots. I mean, they're just basically staying alive as much, doing whatever they got to do to clear that net. There's no risk on the net on any of these balls here. CJ's was a little bit lower, so a little riskier. Look at this. Look at the height on that ball. And that ball's up here. I mean, that's crazy height. Almost never going to hit the net. Same thing with Fede there. And then what happens there? Score a point. They score a point by simply keeping the ball in play without trying to do too much. And that goes in the first column of scoring without making it to the line. All right, now we got to do a little bit of math. We're going to go deep on these numbers here so I can show you exactly how this making it to the line, not making it to the line, or scored points off the line impacts the results. So we have 3 columns up here. We have scored point offline. That last one I showed you was scoring point off the line. Hayden and Fede never made it up to the line, but they in fact still scored a point. Made it to the line means you made it to the line under control and are there and ready to battle from the line. Did not make it is like the one I showed you there where CJ hit a couple of thirds or fifths into the net, never made it to the line. And then here you have JW and CJ on the top, Fed and Hayden on the bottom. We're going to look at game 3 first, because game 3 was a little bit lopsided. Score was 11-4. But you're going to see here that these numbers bear out that result. Game 4 was much tighter game. It was 11-8. And I'm going to be able to show you in that game how this is such a big part of the results. And that's probably where you're going to want to spend your time, again, depending on where you are at in your what level you're playing at right now. Okay, so scored point off the line. JW and CJ got no free points. There was no point that they scored because of a mistake that Fede and Hayden made on a return of serve or on a volley where they hadn't made it to the line yet. But look at the difference here. Fede and Hayden got 4 points like that, including the one that I showed you there where it's just a missed, essentially a force shot. I know it's not number 4 in sequence, but because Fede and Hayden are back at the baseline, the shots that CJ and JW hit, and they're essentially 4 shots, and you can't miss those. So that's how Fede and Hayden got those 4 free points. Now, look at these numbers here. So we have 8 made it to the line out of 14. That is a 57% making it to the line. They did not make it to the line almost half the time. At the pro level, that's, it's like almost impossible to win a game at the pro level with that type of number. Now compare that to Hayden and Fede and Hayden. Now these numbers, I'm dividing them by 17, not by this 4 I'm excluding from it. We can talk about that another time if you want. Maybe we'll do like a ask me a question or something about it. So they made it 82% of the time and didn't make it 17% of the time, basically, or 18% of the time. 18% of the time. So 18% not making it versus 43%, 82 versus 57%, plus 4 free points. You end up with a score 11 to Fede and Hayden, 4 to JW and CJ. Very difficult to win when it's such a disparity in making it to the line, not making it to the line, plus giving up the free points. Now I'm going to show you game 4 because those numbers will show you a totally different story in terms of making it, not making it, and how this was the absolute decider in that game. Now let's compare game 3 to game 4. In game 4, which was a much tighter score of 11-8, identical. Made it to the line 72% of the time. It's the same for both. And did not make it to the line 18% of the time. So we have an identical numbers there in terms of made it to the line, didn't make it to the line between the two teams. Score was 11-8. So you'll notice this score spread is 3 points. How did Fed and Hayden get those 3 points? Right there. Scored points off the line. These were 2 missed returns of serve and 1 missed force shot by JW and CJ. That's the difference in the game. Otherwise, they played even on the battle for the line. So what you see here is how the battle for the line in game 3, where it was super skewed, and there were some gifted points, results in 11-4 game. It's a train wreck of a game, right? It's a runaway. This game, much tighter. The difference in this game is the scored points off the line. If you're playing pickleball right now and you're 4-0 and under, so 3-0, 3-5, beginner, whatever, right? Focus on this because these are pro numbers here. These numbers in a rec match or in a 3-0 match would be something like, 5 here, 6 there, things like that. There's a lot to be gained here. If you're 4-0 plus, not just, right around 4-0, 4-0 plus, then you're going to focus more on this part of it. And what I recommend here in terms of what you want to focus on is do what you saw Fede and Hayden do. Take the net out of play. Don't be so cute with your thirds, your fifths, your sevenths, where you're trying to hit these perfect shots and potentially leaving the ball in the net, like we saw CJ do a couple of times there. Give yourself a ton of margin over the net because in advanced play, making it to the line versus not making it to the line is going to be key in your results. The second advanced strategy we're going to look at has to do when all 4 players are up here playing the non-volley zone or kitchen game. Specifically, we're going to be looking at dinking patterns. And it's a mistake that JW and CJ made in this match, which was to limit themselves into basically this area here. So they dinked in this area almost exclusively for much of the match. They would go out wide to Hayden once in a while on this side here, but they basically kept the ball over here. What that does is it collapses your court, right? It basically makes it so that you have a really small area to work in. You can't really stress your opponents that well there by just keeping the ball here. This player here, his name is Federico Staksrud. He is an amazing player. The plan cannot be to just send balls to Federico like we're drilling and expect Federico to break down there. But that's what a lot of what JW and CJ did. I'm going to show you different rallies here. Some rallies where they basically kept going into that box and it didn't work out well. And then some rallies where they stretched out Hayden a little bit. So what you're going to see throughout this process is you're going to see, look at Hayden. Hayden's basically standing, on the right side of the court. No fear of anything going behind him, really. He's willing to come in there and threaten. Federico's basically drilling right now. And Federico's under no stress either because Federico's basically covering this little zone here. He's in a drill fest here. This is not going to be a successful strategy for any team, whether it's JW and CJ or anybody else, to just basically allow this part of the court to be non-existent here. And then, it's just basically see who misses first. This here is a concept that we call respect the X. You can see the ball came this way. That should be CJ's ball here. Look at JW's body, how stretched out he is. That's just a really difficult dink. JW is an amazing athlete, right? He's going to hit more of these successfully than the average bearer, if you will. But it still puts stress even on a player like JW. You're going to see in a second he misses the shot. If you want to learn more about Respect the X, I'll put a link, I think it's up here somewhere. And at the end, I'll give you the link again. Free guide, you can learn about Respect the X. So what happens is he reaches across here, ends up missing the stink. Again, it just adds more stress to the shot mechanically than is necessary. Here, there's a nice paddle tap. I do think this is something that, if you're playing competitively, make sure you're paddle tapping. I'm going to show you some other rallies now where they stretch Hayden some and see how the results are different, but then they keep coming back to this very bottled up dinking pattern, which hurts him in the end. This rally here, we're going to see some more movement by JW and CJ. See how they're pulling Hayden wide there? Then over to Fed. Hayden's going to have a harder time coming over on those balls here. CJ basically dinked pretty much every shot from there over to Fed. He probably should have moved some of those over here, particularly how open that is. But you're going to see basically all these balls going to Fed, and then you'll see at once it goes outside to JW, he'll start moving it over to Hayden by putting some stress on Hayden there. Also opening up that court, so that creates some stress there with them when they move back together again. See the difference there? So Hayden's having to move from left to right. If he wants to do that, he's entitled to do that, but at least it puts some stress on him, creates some discomfort with Federico, in terms of who's going to take which ball. Once he's set there, he's just basically waiting to pounce when he wants to. You see how he's going to go cross court here, and that's going to then create the error there by Hayden. So that's a much more effective dinking pattern where you're keeping the ball moving around, right? You're putting stress there. But if you're just basically bottling up all your dinks over here, it's just not a successful way of engaging with it. Here you have, now, and here's the thing, right? Hayden and Federico didn't have any problems. They would go wide, they'd go wide. They didn't care as much. So here they've stressed CJ out. Look where Hayden is standing, right? So now Hayden's able to take a little bit of a floater there by CJ and poke it through the middle there because he's standing there. He has no fear of the ball going behind him. It's just not a good way of dinking, this, bottling yourself up here. As we run through this, if you're going to be in Florida, there's a couple of really good tournaments that PPA is running here, one in Lakeland, one in Pictona in December. The one in Lakeland is in November. Come check it out. Watching this live is really an amazing activity here. So here you have, look where Hayden's standing, right? Because he's basically camped out here, right? Because nothing's going over here, pretty much. So he's just standing there, lets him take this ball. He jumps in front of Fed, and he's just going to rip this ball into JW's chest for a point. Why? Because he can. Because he's, allowed to stand here as opposed to being stressed out. This point is at 10-8. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2, but it doesn't matter. 10-8 here for the championship point. And then what I want you to see here is, again, how they fall into this. It's a bad habit of just going to this little box over here. They'll hit it to Hayden a couple of times, but percentage-wise, it's almost non-existent. But anyway, get some tickets to the PPA Tour if you can. If you're in town and want to check it out, you can come say hello. We'll be there. If you don't get to make it in person, then Pickleball TV, good place to do that. I actually got my subscription to it. I'm able to watch the replays and stuff. It's a lot of fun. But you see how these balls, they just, look where Hayden gets to come over again. It's just Hayden and Federico's choice right now. It's whatever they want to do. Hayden can take the ball. If not, Fed is fine just dinking it back. There's no stress. Finally, it's pulled over to Hayden that one time, a couple of times. And then we're going to see basically, the ball go back to Fed here, So basically bottling themselves up here, just a really restrictive way of engaging with your dinking patterns. You can't put any stress on the opponent. I mean, look at Federico. Looks like he's in a drilling session right now. And as I mentioned earlier, if the plan is to dink to Federico until that breaks down, it's going to be a long day for the team trying to do that. It's just not going to be successful. You got to make the players move left to right, back to Federico again. Hayden can jump in when he wants to. It's playing, a little bit scared of Hayden, I guess, a little bit, wondering what he's going to do, which I get. But you just can't keep putting the ball there again and again and again. Finally, it's pulled wide that one time. Hayden's going to come back, and he comes back to the middle again. Look where he's standing, basically standing here. No fear of the ball going behind him. And then what ends up happening here is you're going to have CJ's going to attack this ball. Hayden standing in a good spot, no stress. Boom, boom, boom. And that is championship point. So dinking patterns, make sure you keep access to the whole court when you're dinking. Don't allow your opponents to bottle you up like that. It's a really difficult way to play up and down volley zone line. If you're not yet at 4-0, focus on those free points that you're giving away, or they're scoring points without having to make it up to the line. The Respect the X will be here and down in the show notes. Get that Respect the X, learn more about pickleball, and I hope to see you in the future.